We are live now. Oi, gente, eu sou... a Kali vai apresentar.
Oi! Então, dando continuidade ao nosso módulo de saúde única, na nossa penúltima palestra do circuito, passo a palavra para a Briana.
Oi, gente, eu sou responsável pelo módulo de saúde única e eu estou aqui para apresentar o Andrés Gonzaléz, eu não sei se eu pronunciei certo o nome dele. Ele é representante da FAO e ele vai falar um pouco sobre o papel do médico veterinário em emergências sanitárias. E eu também trouxe a Jéssica Kayamori, ela também está fazendo consultoria na FAO, e eu vou deixar a Jéssica se apresentar e depois vou deixar o André se apresentar como eles acharem melhor, mas a Jéssica vai estar ajudando a gente nas perguntas e o André ele vai ministrar a palestra inteira em inglês para a gente. So, you can introduce yourself if you want to.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I thank you for the invitation for doing this presentation and talking a bit more about the role of veterinarians in the management of animal health emergencies. My name is Andrés Gonzaléz, and as Rihanna just said, I'm working at the regional office of the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. At the regional office for Latin America and the Caribbean, we are we are located in Santiago in Chile. And it's a pleasure for me to be today with you. And well, I will just share a presentation. Just let me...
Jéssica, você quer se apresentar enquanto ele ajeita?
Você que sabe, Bri, se quiser deixar para depois também.
Se apresenta aí, aproveita que você já está aí.
Bom, boa noite a todo mundo. Meu nome é Jéssica Kayamori, sou médica veterinária. Atualmente trabalho junto com a FAO a nível de escritório central, junto com Roma, no Centro de Gestão de Crise em Saúde Animal. Também sou doutoranda da PUC Paraná, né, do programa de ciência animal. E, bom, hoje eu vou estar auxiliando um pouco na parte do debate final, né, das perguntas e respostas, na sessão de perguntas e respostas. E tenho trabalhado com o Andrés em um projeto bem interessante, né, em gestão de crises sanitárias vinculadas à saúde animal, e acho que a palestra vai ser, bom, espero que seja bem proveitosa e que vocês aproveitem bastante. Muito obrigada pelo convite, pela oportunidade.
Perfeito, obrigada, Jess. So you can share the presentation now.
Can you see the presentation now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Obrigada, very good. So again, I apologize for not being able to speak Portuguese, but I will hold this presentation in English. And well, as I just said, we will be going through some key points about the role of veterinarians in the management of animal health emergencies, which is turning nowadays in a very relevant topic, more than ever, I would like to say, based on what we are living at the moment worldwide. And it's very important to know that we as vets have a relevant and a very principal role while trying to prevent, control, and try to stop sometimes the animal health emergencies. And well, this first slide is just to show you, this is going to be back and forth, moving from the United Nations level, from the level of international organization working on animal health. And sometimes we will be making some comments more related to how it works at the country level or at the field level. So, but with this graph, what I would like to point out is that at once it is very well interconnected. The system from which we are now depending on means that the society as we know it it's very related and interconnected, and it makes at the same time that the risks that we can face in the different part of the society can affect the different parts of this kind of pyramid. And by saying that, I mean that the biosphere, which is all what we know as environment, it's containing the society. I mean, the society is immersed in the biosphere, and it's going to be very close and tight related. And the activities carried by the society are going to produce somehow what we call economy. So, and these three levels that you can see here, they are very well interconnected. And if we face some risk, if we face some damage or harmful situation in any of those levels, this is going to affect the whole. And what you see around these small squares are what we're going to see them in a more detail later on in this presentation, but those are the so-called Sustainable Development Goals. This is the way that we at the United Nations has divided the work, let's say, in a very simple manner, that we have divided the work to be able to achieve some goals. And those goals, among others, is to have a world without hunger and without poverty, among any others. But those are the ones we are going to be discussing today a lot. So this table is in Spanish, and I will try to make those numbers clear for you. And it's a very recent report coming from the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean region. And they were assessing the situation at the moment during the COVID pandemic. And what we are seeing, it's very alarming. We can see here the progression of the poverty, the progression of the loss of jobs or work opportunities. And we are seeing that here, that very specific, we might have around 30 million more people facing poverty in Latin America if we compare with 2018. And the percentages of the extreme poverty is also going to increase in about 13.5%, which means that the COVID pandemic is not only affecting the sanitary situation or the health situation of our continent, it is also affecting, and it's going to affect in a great manner how our societies are developing. And this, as you all know, is related to a virus that is coming from an animal source, and then the virus just moved from animals to humans. And this is, among other things, why it is important to work on emergency preparedness to avoid animal health issues that can sometimes become into a public health or human health issues. And this is one of the biggest examples we can see so far in our age, in our time. And this is something very actual, very dates and numbers that are very new, and they are going to progress, unfortunately, in the bad sense. So it means that they are going to move. Those numbers are rather expected to increase, that the poverty is going to increase. So it's very important that we keep that in mind as an important argument to work on emergency preparedness to avoid or to prevent animal health threats. It looks very complicated, this graph, but what I would like you to focus on is that this report from it's the Global Risk Report from late this year, is trying to categorize the risk that we are going to be facing, or where are the main risks sources that the society is going to face in the next times. And as you can see here, very important, they put in the center climate or environmental related risks. And this is where we as vets or our health authorities can try to diminish or try to minimize these risks. Well, you can see here these green squares, which are mainly related to the extreme weather. We are going to have more and more extreme weather. It could be too hot or too cold, depending on the part of the where we are. But the situation, the weathers are going to be extremer and extremer. The climate action failures, because we are not going to be able to respond as rapid and in the broader way we are expecting to respond. The loss of biodiversity. So we know that the biodiversity contribute to the production in the way that when we try to increase and to improve biodiversity, we are going to have production systems that are more resistant, that are more adapted to local conditions. And it's very important that we know that in our region and actually globally, the biodiversity is going lost because of monoculture and because of trying to use only few species to produce, which is in turn a big risk, because those animals, they are going to be good for some things, like for example, for producing milk or meat. But sometimes by trying to look for good production parameters, we are losing resistance parameters. We are losing some resistance capabilities against diseases. So those animals, they are going to produce more milk and more meat, but they are going to be more sensitive to the heat, or they are going to be more sensitive to endemic parasites, for example. So this is another great topic to talk about. And of course, the human-made environmental disaster, deforestation, soil degradation, and all of them contribute to natural disaster, like tsunamis and all type of natural disaster that at certain point cannot be controlled by now. What we can do is to try to modify the way we are interacting with the environment. And here, just moving a bit closer to the animal sphere, it's to try to get more details about what is the importance to try to prevent zoonosis. As the COVID-19 and plenty of other diseases, we know that about 60% of all human infectious diseases are coming from animals sources. So it is not minimal, the impact that can have this interaction here between humans, production animals, livestock, and wildlife, and how they interact. And this interaction is based on the way we are producing food, based on the way we are interacting with the environment. This is altered. This is modified in a very bad manner, in a very bad way. And this is why we are going to be facing more and more zoonosis in the future, because this relationship between these three small parts is not as it used to be or as it should be. And you can see here the primary drivers of diseases in the past, not only in the currently crisis, in the currently COVID-19 crisis, but other diseases in the past. And as you can see here, the most relevant drivers of disease emergencies are the way we're using land, the way we are distributing land, the agricultural industry changes international travel and commerce. This is very important because we are having more and more connections between the different parts of the world, and which means that the so-called transboundary diseases, which are diseases that can be moved very easy from one territory to another one by being transported by humans or by migrating wild animals or by exported or imported livestock animals. They are going to be also very important, or they are going to play an important role in the dissemination or the transmission or the transfer of diseases between different regions of the world. So it is not surprising. It is not a surprise that we had an outbreak in China, and this disease is going to be able to move all over the world within few days, because this international travel and commerce and the production activity is moving at a very rapid velocity, which increase the risk of altering again this relationship all over the world. So for this, I'm going to be back to the Sustainable Development Goals we saw at the beginning. And as you can see, they are 17, for those of you that are not familiar with. They are very focused on different topics, and they belong to many strategies, but the strategy we are following at the FAO, at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, is the so-called the 2030 Agenda, which is a plan to eradicate poverty and hunger, among any other of the Sustainable Development Goals. And today I will ask you to focus on the SDG. We call them SDG from Sustainable Development Goals. We will be focused on the SDG 3, which is mainly related to good health and well-being. So we can make the same that we're going to do today, because they all have the same relevance, the same importance. But since we're focusing today in animal health emergency, we will be rather talking about the SDG 3. And what are the main worries while talking about sustainability, while talking about a production system that can be sustainable? And sustainable means that they are able to produce, that they are able to deliver food and products for the human activities, but at the same time in harmony with the environment. And the main worries to keep that sustainability are the food and nutrition security, the livelihood and the economic growth, the climate and the natural resources use, and the health and the animal welfare. So now I hope that you can follow me. We are moving deep on the SDG 3, and we are going to focus in this quarter of the SDG 3, which is the health and the animal welfare. So what is embedded in this SDG 3? We have already talked about zoonosis, which are diseases that can move from animals to humans and vice versa. We also include here the emerging diseases, which are diseases that we don't know from the past, that they are completely new for us, for humans or for animals. Pandemic risk, very actual, very high topic at the moment. The antimicrobial resistance, which is also as powerful, as destructive as any other disease coming from viruses or from any other agents. The resistance that we are facing, or that also animals are facing, to the antimicrobials products, it's a great source of danger for the good health and the well-being. And of course, the animal welfare. So there are many examples about the animal welfare that are going to be relevant for the production of food out of the livestock production, because we are not going to be able to produce as we used to do it. And some examples about it is that, like, for example, the dehorning, to cut the horns of calves, is not going to be allowed in the future. So we need to look for an option or an alternative. There are some that are now being explored in the research area, or the castration for piglets, for male piglets. This is also another example of things that we are not going to be able to do in the future. But so far, we need to look at an alternative that is somehow compatible with the production level we need, and we are expecting to fulfill the needs of the humanity in terms of proteins coming from animal source. So, and for this, there is an approach and a strategy that is going, it is not new at all. It is available for at least a couple of decades worldwide, but now seems like not only technical people, but governments are more and more interested about it. So let's say learning out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and given the importance that it should have to the One Health approach. So what is that about? What is saying the One Health approach? The One Health approach is a strategy that says that we should never anymore working separate as animal health authorities. We should not be working separate to the other health parts anymore. And which are the other health parts? The public health, which is the one dealing with the human health, the environmental health, and the plant and vegetal health, which is mainly more developed in the agriculture. So means that animal health, plant health, environmental health, and public health, they cannot be treated separate anymore. They need to be treated together, cooperating to each other to be able to better cope with challenges coming out of health crisis. And for this, there are many guidelines, but the one we are going to present today is this guideline to address zoonotic diseases in the countries worldwide. And this is a multi-sectoral guideline being developed by three organizations. And these three organizations, you can see it here. We have the FAO from the animal and agricultural part and the environmental part. We have the World Organization for Animal Health, the OIE, and we have the WHO, the World Health Organization, being mainly responsible for the public health and the human health. So these three, or we call it the tripartite collaboration, this tripartite work is responsible for developing, designing, and implementing the One Health approach worldwide. And they have like a global mandate, and this global mandate is going to be, addressed to the different regions of the world. And we, for example, here in Santiago, we are responsible to develop this One Health approach in the region, in Latin America, in the 33 countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. So here we will going to find the way these programs needs to be addressed and the ways we need to move in order to create national capabilities in the countries of the region, because it's very conceptual, very theoretic, this part, but there is a practical application. And this is what is the most important, because we need to move from this paper, from this booklet, to activities that are going to be developed for vets and other health authorities in the countries of the region, and they need to know how to implement this. And this is our role at the FAO, to try to prepare them, to train them on how to apply these guidelines. I hope you can follow me good so far. And based on what you've heard, we are going to focus in the next slides on a strategy, part of the big, let's see One Health as an umbrella, a big umbrella, and under this umbrella we will find plant health activities or initiative, animal health initiative, environmental health initiative, where let's focus on some initiatives for managing emergencies linked to animal health threats. And for this, the FAO has been working in the development and the designing of good emergency management practices. And this is a part of a strategy developed for the whole world. And now, as I just said, we are trying to apply this to our region to see how we can train the veterinary authorities, the animal health authorities in the different countries, to use this kind of good practices. And sometimes when we are at the university, and I would say that just talking about me, we think being a vet will be, let's say, in a great percentage linked to clinical activities. It would be more like small animal clinic or large animal clinic, or maybe some biotechnologies, but always seeing that more contact to the animal. Well, here, while talking or thinking about animal health authorities, we are going to be able to produce guidelines. We're going to be able to produce frameworks and responsible for the activity of the practical vets. So we are going to assure that they have the legal or the regulatory tools to do a good job. And this strategy has been developed by a specialistic group of the FAO, which is the Emergency Management Center for Animal Health, based in our headquarters in Rome, in Italy. So what is it that in Rio? These are guidelines that are going to organize and strengthen countries' ability and capacity to manage animal health emergencies. And as guidelines, it's very important that you understand that they are going to be there to give clarity, to give information to the national health authorities, but they are not they are not obeyed to take it. They take it if they want it. But of course, you've seen now during the COVID-19 contingency how important it is to be prepared for emergencies or for animal health emergency. So this is an international legal framework which is based on what we can consider from the animal health point of view, our Bible, our main text or reference text, which is the OIE terrestrial code. This is a regulatory framework for terrestrial animals, and this is created for the International Animal Health Organization, and we are the ones at the FAO, at the United Nations, in charge of creating the capacity so that the veterinary services of the countries can somehow follow these regulations. So This is a method that never stop evolving, that never stop being improved. So at any time of the process, we are also learning by new situations. And this is a very dynamic process. So it's going to be moving around the creation and the improvement of better and better good emergency management practices, including risk communications, the essential concepts for applying emergency management, the advocacy, so that we are sure that resources and capabilities are available to apply or to implement these good emergency practices. The communication of the risk, so that people can in advance know when we are going to be in risky situations. The operational part, so okay, I know now the theory, but how can I put this in the practice? And for this, there is of course a lot of training and practical activities to do during the training on these emergency management practices. So when we say we consider this from or as an holistic organization, is because we are going to have people responsible or for the activities that are not only responsible to say, okay, we want to do this, but they are also in charge of mobilizing or looking for resources, because no emergency plan is going to be alive if we don't have the needed amount of resources. And this is also a big or a critical situation in our countries, because sometimes we have amazing response plan or emergency plans, but then if we don't have the resources we need to implement them, then we're not going to be able to put them in actions. And all this harmonic interaction of different institutions, it's going to be very, very key to develop good emergency practices. And I'm saying this because when we talk about animal health authorities, we always think about veterinarians. But it is also important to know that a police officer at the airport, which is well trained to identify when people is trying to smuggling or to bring illegal meat products into the country, this police officer is also part of this emergency management plan. Even if he's not a vet, he is controlling or looking for products that can be a risk for the animal health status of a specific country. So there is a big institutional interaction here, a global plan, but also plan for the specific or the different institutions, and of course the private sector. Why? Because at the public level, we create regulations, we create frameworks, we create guidelines, recommendations. We also create penalties, because when someone is catch at the airport with, I don't know, pork meat, and they are not able to bring pork meat into the country, so they get a fine. But at the end of the day, it is as important to have the training in the public level, to have the private sector trained, so that they know what are the risks they are going to go into if they don't take the right measures at the right time. By doing these good emergency practices guidelines, we are not expecting to build what it should already be available at the countries. Means that it is the country's responsibilities to have in place the strong prerequisites to be able to apply or to use these guidelines. so that they need to have the veterinary services in a well working shape, let's say well-trained veterinary services. The value chains mean that not only at the production level, but also the commercialization of animal products and byproducts. The risk analysis, so that they need to be very often carrying risk analysis to know where the most relevant risks are going to come from. And this is very important when we talk about creating a action plan, because resources are going to be always limited, and we need to know where to act and what is going to have more priority than other things. And for this, the responses or the answers to those questions are coming out of risk analysis. And of course, strategies and the coordination we have just discussed just a couple of seconds ago. What is, or how can we define a animal health event? So it can be a single incident. It means only one animal, one individual facing or having this disease, or a group of animals that are epidemiologically related. So those are the definitions we need to use when talking about an animal health event. And it's very important because it does not only involve a disease, it can only involve an infection, an infestation. So let's say a tick infestation, physical or chemical, let's say pesticide contamination, consequence of a natural phenomenon, or accidental or deliberate action. So this is not only useful for diseases, but also for all the other different events, let's call it event in a generic manner, that can be somehow linked to the animal health, part of this of the action of plan. So what you can see here, this is at the moment, it seems like everyone is expert on epidemiological curves, because we have heard a lot in the news about it because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But this is what it looks like, a standard epidemic curve. And we know that at the very beginning, and this is basic for you as an epidemiological background, this is, there is a part of this curve where we see nothing. And we think that, okay, nothing is happening, why should I prepare while nothing is happening? But the problem is that it might be here the so-called incubation period, so that the virus or the disease or the agent is circulating. We don't see it because we don't have clinical cases. And when it starts here to move up in the curve, then it's too late to react. So very important to have what we call here the passive surveillance and the active surveillance, to be able to identify as much as possible in this part that we are going to be later on, how we collect for a better pragmatical understanding of this curve. And then we have the peak of the curve, and then the number of cases start to go down until they hopefully disappear in the time. It is important to know that an animal health emergency need to be identified or officially identified by the authorities as a state of the emergency. And this state is what is going to allow the implementation of this emergency. And the state is going to be triggered by an animal health event or creating major disruption or condition. So means that it can be like the whole herd or animal population of an X part of the country is going to be affected, and the animal is going to die. They might die as they might not die, but that could also, for example, indirectly influence the availability of animal products coming out of those production units. So Very, very important to define this. And then we have some actions that are going to be taken immediate, some decisions that are going to change the way things are going to be done in the future, considering the emergency. And then, of course, we need to define time, space, and threshold. Means that emergency measures, they cannot stay forever. And now we see that very good with the COVID-19 reality, that the lockdown is a solution or a part of a solution, but the work cannot stay in a lockdown situation forever, because then we're not going to die because of the virus. We're going to die because of our production system are stopped and no food is going to be available. And the threshold, I need to define at which point are going to activate my state of emergency. And then the rules that are going to be deployed and the exit strategy out of this animal health emergency. And then I'll give you here just an example of how this curve can react. I have this first example is that we have a new case of an exotic disease. It means a disease that was not present in my country. Then I will have it here, and I will have the normal or the standard epidemic curve. And it will happen here. And the problem with this kind of introduction of exotic disease is that I don't know how this curve is going to move during the time or along the time, which is happening now with the COVID. Each country is experimenting the way or different ways of movement of evolution of the epidemic curve. This is happen when an exotic disease is detected and it gets into as an exotic disease into a country. In another case, can be like when we have an endemic disease, which is a disease that has been already present or has been already in a territory, in a country, or in a part of the country, but this disease we have had control by, for example, using a vaccine. So we know that we have X disease, but we vaccinate and the disease is controlled. But at a certain point, because of weather conditions, because of my vaccine was not working as it should be, then I have an increasement of the cases on this disease. So this is another situation. As you see here, the curve move a bit different. And it's also another type of emergency that we can be facing as veterinarians working for the health authorities. So for a better understanding, we have somehow divided this curve in 4 parts. And we call this first part where nothing is happening, or apparently nothing is happening, the peacetime phase. Then we have the alert phase, the emergency phase, and the reconstruction phase. So, and keep that in mind, because the peacetime, as we call it, is one of the most important parts of this process to build good emergency practices, to build good emergency management practices, because when the catastrophe, when the emergency is there, we are not going to have time to prepare. So the preparation needs to be done in advance. And as you see here, along these 4 parts, 4 actions mainly or primarily are going to be taken. We're going to be able to prepare, to prevent and detect, which is a great part of the work we do at the beginning. But then if we're not able to prevent then, and the disease gets into, then we need to be able to detect it, to respond, and of course to recover after the response and the detection. And you can see here how, well, remember the 4 different phases we have seen before: the peacetime, the alert, the emergency, and the reconstruction, and how these 5 different actions are going to be shared, say it like this, along the 4 phases. So we know that the time for preparing is basically during peacetime, where nothing is happening. We cannot prepare during the emergency, as we just said. Oh, sorry. Yeah. and respond. Well, of course, we have nothing to respond during peacetime. Response is going to be here during the emergency part. So this is representation, a very good representation on how these actions need to be shared along the time during an animal health emergency. Same here, but in a graphical way, we see that at least 3 of those 5 actions are going to be taken during the peacetime. So it means a lot of preparation, training, practical activities, and retraining, so that when we have the unlucky situation to get into an alert, we are already prepared, and it happens during the peacetime again. And of course, in the reconstruction part, which sometimes we say, okay, the emergency is gone, everything is good. No, we need to be able to recover, for example, the disease-free status. So it's very important that we work here, because this is going to affect our production system. If we have a production system that is not that does not have a disease-free status, our products are not going to move as they should, as they used to do before the emergency. So it is also going to affect the economic part of my production system. So why is important to plan? Because while planning, before the emergency, we will identify what should it be done, when should it be done, how should it be done, who is going to do what, and of course, what is to be done. So in this planning phase, in this planning part before the emergency, all these questions need to be answered. Remember, and I will say it again, we are not going to have time to work on this when the emergency is already there. And what we want to reach, or our main goal, is to avoid that an emergency become a crisis. This is what we are going to avoid. We don't want that an emergency. Sometimes we cannot avoid to have an emergency, but we can avoid to have a crisis. And this is one of the main goals of this progressive preparation plan. Again, we have said that many times, but that if I would like you to remember about something about this presentation, is that the act during peacetime is the most important part of the preparation for animal health emergencies. And here, very shortly, we see that these good emergency management practices are going to be used for countries, for the veterinarians or the official veterinarians of the countries, for international and regional organizations. We can also train personnel, or we can also train some not only vets, but also other authorities related to the animal, to the sanitary work of a country or a region, so that they have this TOT, we call it here the training of trainers, means that we are going to build local capacity, so that at the end, we from the FAO, we don't need to come every time to train or to build capacity, so that they have local capacity, and we are just in contact with the trainers and see how they can update their capabilities or their skills. But some local capacities are at any time available, and some workshops that can be designed as we want it. As I said, it is not only linked to diseases, but to infection, infestations, and any other events. So the structure of these activities can be modified as we want it. And just at the very end, to tell you that this manual, that these good emergency management practices are very well related to another manual or another guidelines that are issued from the FAO, which is the Livestock Emergency Guidelines and Standards, and they are an essential tool, an essential information to be able to apply good emergency management practices. So this is a short overview about what we do to try to improve the animal health status in the countries, in the region, and globally when we see the global work of FAO. And it's sometimes a challenge to, as we said at the beginning, to try to bring that to the field, because at the end, the clinical vets or the vets working direct with animals are the ones that are going to benefit the most when applied good animal health practices. So this is what I had to present to you, and thank you for your attention.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. I just mute my mic so that...
Okay. We have some questions for you, Jéssica, se você quiser.
Andrés, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. I think it was great and really taking into consideration all the major steps that we need to, well, consider literally, and highlighting that preparedness is way more important than responding. And I think this is one of the key messages, and thanks for your time and for the great presentation you did. Okay, so I was checking the chat, and we do have a lot of interesting questions. So Nicole is asking if you think that the let's say the free or liberate use of agrotoxics can cause can disturb the the balance worldwide in terms of environmental aspects. Maybe this was addressed because of the sustainable introduction that you did. So if you want to further elaborate.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica, for the translation. Well, definitely that this is one of the events we have just mentioned during the different events that can affect the animal and the public health status. Well, I believe that by agrotoxics here, we mean something like pesticides or products used in the industrial agriculture. This is what I can interpret from this. And of course, if they are not rational used, if they are not used in a manner that they are in harmony with the environment, they can affect the equilibrium, they can affect this balance between production and environmental life. So it's very important that we think more and more, and this is why we keep on insisting the relevance of the One Health approach, that if we are going to look for an animal that is ill, that is having some symptoms, that we don't only look at the symptoms and the clinical signs, but also try to look around what is happening in the environment. Should be part of the anamnesia, so that we can better understand where the source of this problem can be coming from. And of course, the interaction with public health authorities that will tell us at the end of the day, okay, are those signs from the animal somehow being related with some signs or symptoms seen in humans in the same locality, in the same village. So it's very it's all interconnected. I hope it answered the question.
Okay, so we had another question regarding zoonotic emergencies. And the question was, in your perspective and point of view, do you see more veterinarians acting in such type of emergencies, or health doctors, public health doctors acting on the response of a zoonotic emergency? Well, in the future or in the actual panorama?
Yeah, well, what we can see is that, let's say, each one is doing its part of the job. We vets, we are mainly in charge of looking what is happening, what we call the spillover. And the spillover is this, let's call it jump from the animal sphere, from this animal world, when a disease jump from an animal to a human. And of course, we as vets have not only the responsibility, but the knowledge and the skills to try to prevent the spillover, because we are at the very, very, very front part of this chain. And when the disease has already moved to the human part, it is sometimes too late, and it's already transferred to the public, or it's already considered as a public health matter. But I would say that there is equal responsibilities for public health authorities and veterinarian health authorities.
Thank you. If I'm not wrong, the other question that appeared in our screen was regarding if there is any voluntary opportunity of work or position within FAO.
I know that there is a internship or fellowship programs for volunteers, and young vets are always invited to contact FAO and try to look for possibilities to get in this. This is one of the work fields you might be interested in the future, and from the FAO part, you can have a great overview on what is happening, not only at the authority level, but also at the field level. But there is some internship or fellowship programs from the FAO.
I think I can complement this question by saying that I myself started as a volunteer with FAO. So I'm a live proof that we do, the FAO do, and other international organizations, they do have volunteer positions, same as intern positions. And usually you are assigned to different departments or units. So animal health, we have an animal health and livestock department, and different programs distributed in headquarters, regional offices, same as where Andrés is working at, and even national offices. And it depends on how much space or funding the program has to offer internship positions or volunteer positions. So the opportunities there is just a question. It's just a matter of you reaching out and contacting the people of interest within the organization, but also making sure you have your CV registered in the organization website. If you look for vacancy announcements or jobs at FAO, you are able to find this kind of opportunities. Well, one more question. So, and a really interesting one. So how is FAO acting in Brazil and Latin America when it's related to animal health?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, because as I just said before, we cannot go to a specific country and say, this is what you need to do. We go there, we offer assistance, we offer information, we offer guidelines, and guidelines are very difficult from a law, because a guideline tells you what you should do. You take it or you don't take it. This is your own decision as a country or as a national authority. And then the way we are acting is that, or that we are relating within the region, is that either because FAO is having the regional office where I'm working now at, then we have 3 different sub-regional offices, one for South America, one for Central America, and one for the Caribbean. So, and then we try to, again, share the work between the 3 different sub-regions. And then we have national offices. And in the national offices, each country of most of them, there are some countries that they don't have a national office, but most of them have a national offices. And then this is the way we directly interact with governments. And then, for example, in Brazil, there is FAO Brazil. And if we have anything to support, or we have anything to provide to the national animal health authorities in Brazil, we do that through the national office. Correct me, Jessica, but I think in Sao Paulo should be the national office of.
The national. So we have an office in Brasilia, Brasilia, and we have a remote office in Curitiba, where
right. So this is the way we are interacting with the local authorities. So I think there is another question here.
Yeah, that's also another interesting one related to sustainability. So how can we cope with the animal protein demand that keeps raising every day, and then cope that with the planet sustainability? And what is the expected scenario in the upcoming years if we increase production?
This is another question that this is one of our challenges. And first things we need to know is that we are going to need more and more protein because we are going to be more people. This is the first part. Second part, we need to improve the condition we are producing animal protein, because in the way we are doing, this is not sustainable. Remember, we were talking about sustainability at the beginning. So we need to produce more and sustainable, mean that we are going to affect or to impact less the environment. And for this, there are some strategies that will shift our production way to a more sustainable production way. And for this, I'll give you some specific examples. Silvopastoralism is a way to combine environment and to have the best of an ecosystem for the service of the livestock production. So that you will combine agriculture, trees that are mainly available or already available in a region with the animal production. And this is the only way that we can meet the animal proteins needs for the future, is that we change, that we transform the way we are producing animal protein today.
Exactly.
There is another question.
This making reference to FAO's main objectives. So, well, does the organization has any plans to prevent more people from starving? If you see a trend of people coming back from the countryside, coming back to the countryside and leaving the big cities? Really complex question.
Well, let's take it in 2 parts. I think it would be easier. Well, for the first question, is easy. All what we are doing is to stop hunger all over the world. This is one of the, as you see, one of the sustainable development goals. But not only this is one of the main mandates for FAO, is that to stop hunger. And for this, a clear strategy is, as we said, the Agenda 2030 means that we expect to reduce dramatically the hunger in the world by the year 2030. And for this, we are taking the needed or the necessary measures today, so that to be able in 10 years to say we achieved that goal. And the second part was more related this interesting movement now from cities, from big cities to the field. And this is also something that show us how important agriculture and livestock production can be for the subsistence of humans all over the world. And it is the fact that if we are not able to keep the food chain so that food can move from the field or from rural areas to the big cities, more and more people are realizing today that there are more and better opportunities to get good food quality or good quality of food in rural areas. And this is what we are seeing in our Latin America, that now people are rather, in the past they used to come from rural to big cities, and now they are moving the other way around. And this is, having said that, this is a great opportunity for us to act, because they are going to need good practices, they are going to need production techniques, they are going to need capacitation, and this is, for us as FAO at the moment, a great opportunity to try to bring them from the very beginning in the right path of producing in a sustainable way.
If I may just add a comment in terms of sustainability, we see the scenario where we see, the animal protein demand increasing, but one thing that we cannot forget is how to make, really dry areas or areas that are not productive at all to become sustainable. Because we do have a lot of people that lives in, let's not say desertic areas, but areas where the ground is not that good, and FAO is always trying to propose sustainable activities and practices, and also in these areas, and it's also a really, really big challenge. How do you make dry areas become fertile and feasible? So that there's also this other side of the inverse side of the situation. Another interesting question. So how big you think that are the changes of knowing how important and required veterinary doctors are in our society nowadays?
Well, as you've seen, it's a bit sad what I'm going to say, but what is happening right now with COVID, it might repeat more frequently in the future. And the only way to try to avoid this, to try to don't repeat what we are facing now, or to be better prepared, we were talking a lot about preparedness, is to involve the veterinarian power as a authority and as a source of knowledge and regulation to the production systems. And this is very clear for me. This is very clear for us, so that we are that we are more and more responsible for what is happening now. We need to take our part of the responsibility, but based on this better plan for the future, to try to don't repeat, to don't go through the same things we are going now through. I think this question, and I think I can understand it without translation. It's also something that it's not a trivial question. I believe that there is an expectation that in the future, not that we are going to live only from insects and protein from insect source, but it's going to be an important protein source. And there are some startups that are already producing protein from insects and alternative sources. So it is going to be important that we know how to deal with this. There is a great amount of proteins that we will need in the future for the new billions of people that are coming in the world, and insects is going to, I believe, one of the important projects or ideas to keep in mind to produce protein for humans, for human consumption. And this is also something that is very relevant for us at the moment, for us here at FAO, and it's related to innovation. Innovation is going to act as a catalytic effect, means that it's going to allow us to move faster while trying to accomplish what we need to do. And the production or the production of protein out of insects can be one of those alternatives.
It would be great if you could transform the crickets invasion into a protein source. We're just having that in southern Brazil at this moment.
So I think that's it from questions. I want to say thank you, Andrés. It's very important for us having a lawyer talking to veterinarians. I don't think we ever had any, actually. So it's a pleasure having you and talking about the stuff you talk to us. And Jessica, thank you so much for coming and always being around, always helping us with everything. So that's it, guys.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, and thank you for the invitation. And you have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Really, really great presentation and good discussion. And thanks again, Brianna and Centro Acadêmico, to allow us to have this opportunity to share something with you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.